How's it going, guys? Welcome back to Fraud on the Telly. In today's video, we're going to be breaking down everything we learned from last night's EXU Calamity Roundtable. An episode in which we learned a lot about the background of a lot of our characters in EXU Calamity, and an episode in which Brennan reveals all, specifically the future of a certain fan favorite NPC, Bolo. As always, if you enjoyed the video and learned something new, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. If you enjoy EXU Calamity, we have a whole swath of EXU Calamity content, from episode breakdowns, theory videos, as well. We answer the question, was EXU Calamity scripted? Spoilers, obviously it wasn't, guys. Video might turn into a bit of a rant, so we're gonna do our best to avoid that. So let's just get right into it, shall we? Well, I want to start off with some really good DM tips and advice that Brennan gives us towards the early half of the show. The cast are discussing how they create characters and their process. They bring up the fact that Brennan allowed them to have certain magical items and things of that nature. Thus, we learned how Zerxus had that insane 26 strength because of his sort of storm belt giant strength, I believe, something along those lines. This is something really funny because Sam even talks about how he felt really bad taking these magical items that were potentially offered to him. But Brennan makes a really cool point here that I think a lot of DMs can learn from. Don't be stingy with the things you don't need to be stingy for. If it's not game breaking, specifically with items or giving a character or player what they want, then why do you not do it? Obviously, you need to account for certain things, and you got to be realistic. But the thing is here, with these characters, it would have been unrealistic if they didn't have these powerful items. They're considered some of the most powerful people in this city in their position as well as in their abilities. So of course they're going to have certain things that meet those criteria. Brennan tells this really cute story about how he used to DM at a summer camp, and this kid kept asking for a lot of different things for his character. He played an elf. One of the things he did ask for is that he wanted to be able to run on snow like Legolas. Brennan, you know, like most DMs would, has an instinct to where he wants to say no, but instead he realizes that yes, he can say yes to this kid for this thing because it's going to make him happy. It makes sense for the character, and as well, the story's set in the summer, so they're not going to be finding a lot of snow to run on. As well, we learned that everyone in their character creation made a certain choice that really pushed the story along. One being Vespin Koras, and how Travis wanted his character Cerrit to be kind of on the trail of Vespin Koras. Thus, it was easy for Brennan to link this into the story. He found a much easier story method to do so. Same goes with Zerxus and Luis. We learned that Luis wanted to have an interaction with a betrayer god at some point in the story. He didn't care exactly how that happened. All that he cared was that he wanted to have it, thus making it really easy for Brennan to set up this Asmodeus story arc. From here, the cast kind of took their time breaking down each of their individual characters. A lot of them, we learned that Travis, and specifically, likes to build his characters from an item. Specifically, this one, it was the tomahawk. Apparently, this tomahawk, this one that he thought of, this very specific tomahawk, I'll put a picture on the screen of it now, was kind of the inspiration for the character Cerrit as a whole. I guess there's a famous soldier who used these tomahawks. He fought in the Philippines. From there, Travis found the Philippine eagle, which looks like this, which gave inspiration for Cerrit, who looks like this. Damn, I need to really get more creative with my character creation, I think, guys. Cerrit's whole thing and his major flaw was that he was a bad father. We see this because it's very interesting. As the role of the Eyes of Avalier, he had eyes for everything but his family at home. We learned that his wife has in fact left Cerrit, something that was only kind of hinted at on the show. They're apparently separated at the time. She told Cerrit that she wanted to go pursue things that were meaningful to her. Cerrit, being this kind of absent father who's so focused in his work, was completely oblivious to the fact that his home life was falling apart around him, thus making his story of eventually being this person that saves his kids. Travis described it as a Juriel type figure, Superman's father, if you didn't know, that gets his kids out in time. It makes for a really fun, fulfilling story, and the fact that they actually managed to get his kids out alive, you know, makes it a really fun bow kind of knot there. As well, Travis talks about wanting to put a part of himself into his character, something that I think we all do, whether we realize it or not. Specifically, it was this trait of Cerrit as a bad father. Travis is obviously a new father, if you couldn't tell from how he played Cerrit, aka the dad simulator. One of Travis's biggest fears is that he'll be a bad father, that he'll be too wrapped up in his work, that he'll miss certain elements in his child's life. We can really see that played out here with Cerrit. D&D is like one of the most cathartic things ever if you treat it like that. A lot of people don't. Personally, highly recommend it. If you got something personal going on in your life and you happen to be in a D&D campaign, work some of that stuff out in your D&D campaign if you feel that you can. It's really cathartic. It's really therapeutic. I think people would genuinely be surprised as to how much therapeutic work that D&D kind of becomes if you allow it to be. As well, the cast members talk about the idea of having children in a story about the Calamity, one in which 2/3 of people of Exandria die, if you didn't know. Personally, I love this choice, and it seems obvious that the cast loved it as well. You see, too many times the orphan trope in D&D or a fantasy setting is just overused. It's easy to have a character that has no attachments go out and do all this crazy adventuring, but the creation of these attachments in family, children, whatever they are, really grounds a character. It makes them more real, more believable, especially in a situation like the Calamity that hits so personally close to home, where the adventure that's happening is taking place in your city at home. The bad things that happen to you. They happen to your family. Like we said, 2/3 of the population died. Innocents died here. It only makes sense and makes it more realistic for the cast as well as the audience to buy into something when the stakes are real and the stakes are high. If you don't use family members in your D&D setting, start doing it. DMs, if you don't start playing on your player character's family members, start doing it. As well, Travis has this line about parenthood I want to spotlight real quick. Travis says parenthood is like your heart being plucked out of you and then it starts walking around, and for the rest of your life all you can do is just try to stop bad things from happening to it. Yeah, I'm not a parent, but I do have a cat, and that's how I feel about this cat. So I can't even imagine what it's like to be a parent now. Thank you for that, Travis. As well, we learned that there was a secret meeting apparently that happened pre-show, pre-meetup. I believe it was a Bria, Lou, and Marisha, if I remember correctly. I thought this was really fun because here they did a lot of the scheming kind of for the Ring of Brass. This is where a lot of their corruption arc kind of came from. And I think it was cool that like Travis' character specifically was kind of cut out of this loop, as he's the Inquisitor character. So it makes it way more immersive when he feels realistically like, hey, wait, there's something going on here between these guys that I'm not privy to. It makes a fun dynamic. I'm glad that Brennan decided to do this. Moving on to Zerxus, Luis's character. Luis is a gem, by the way. This guy's amazing. Please have him back in Critical Role in some kind of capacity, I beg you. The guy wanted to make an extreme redemption pally, one to the max, and man, did he do so. He said he wanted to do this in almost a toxic way, where the guy forms relationships fast, very fast if you couldn't tell, relationships even with the freaking Lord of Hells, the Demon King himself. This is something that every DM loves from their player and they wish they would get from their players. This wholehearted commitment to, you know, a trope or a single character trait, something that drives them so hard. And it makes it easy for Brennan, who plays off of this, especially when he's playing the Lord of the Hells, to do so, because he knows how Zerxus and how Luis is going to respond as the character, because he's very true to this idea of redemption to a fault as his character. So it's funny, they talk about the opening big crazy dream sequence between Zerxus and Asmodeus. Sam jokes saying he thought Luis didn't hear Brennan correctly, that he didn't realize he was talking to the bad god and trying to save the bad god. It was so funny, the whole cast's reaction over the course of EXU Calamity of any time Zerxus had interactions with Asmodeus, because you could just tell on their face, they're like, oh my god, what is this guy doing? What is he doing? He's gonna kill us all. Speaking of that, we might as well talk about Brennan playing Asmodeus, which Brennan gets into a bit on the show. Easily one of the craziest, coolest things we learn was how Brennan's kind of mindset and how he plays Asmodeus. We know that Asmodeus is the Lord of the Hells, the father of lies. But the way Brennan plays him, he really doesn't do a lot of lying in the show. He doesn't lie much to Zerxus. The thing that he does, the main trickery that he does, is appearing to Zerxus in that opening scene as wounded. He says that he does this because he knows that this is what Zerxus wants. He's a human, he wants to redeem, he wants to save. And so by doing this, he basically played right into his hands. We learned as well that Brennan's obviously a master manipulator, if you didn't get that from the show, obviously in a storytelling sense, in that he plays Asmodeus as kind of like this sponge. Like we said, Asmodeus doesn't lie much to Zerxus. If anything, he lets Zerxus project what he wants onto Asmodeus, and then Asmodeus basically just bounces it right out. The guy wants to save someone so why not give him someone to save? So the cool stuff they talked about was Nidas' self-reflection moment, truly like probably the biggest character growth we saw from any character. The guy went from by the end of the episodes to being like the moral core of the party. It's not until Laren's about to destroy the tree that he truly sees the gravitas of the situation, and that this dream that they're pursuing is gonna have some real bad consequences. We remember that Nidas was presented with the prophecy earlier on, but he didn't say it to anyone. If anything, he just discounted it because he was too afraid of what if it meant if it was true. He was too afraid of that. But by the time he realizes that, you know, something really bad has happened here, he hasn't told anyone. And Bree is already casting the spell. It can't be stopped, and everything just can't be undone. As well, speaking of that Tree of Names moment, they talk about what would have happened if Cerrit would have been there. Because remember, Cerrit goes to save his kids. Before that happens, he leaves the party. But man, if it would have been there, it probably would have been a bloodbath. It was already some inter-party conflict, but there was relatively little damage traded between the group. It was more just trying to stop each other from acting. Cerrit, though, already was big sussy vibes of Laren and Patia, and Travis says as much, saying that he instantly probably would have gone for them, which would have been wild, because it probably could have led to TPK vibes here, actually. This would have drastically changed a lot that would have happened, I imagine, in the rest of EXU Calamity. Very interesting to talk about. As well, Sam does a little dive into Loquacious, talking about how his character, if anything, was just the biggest liar of the group because he was lying to himself. As well, it kind of plays into the idea that he himself is a changeling, basically kind of the essence of lying, and everything about their physical appearance is lying. We learned that Loquacious never really wanted to be the voice of the Herald's Tome, and that in doing that job, he basically is forsaking his morals, having to lie to the public about everything. Yeah, so a super cool character design by Sam. Love it. Some other fun stuff they talked about, the relationship between Laren and Loquacious. Originally, this was supposed to just be a fun bit. This idea that, you know, exes who hate each other that don't have a kid, it's funny to watch. Sam, however, does what Sam does best and managed to turn this, you know, fun little bit into this heart-wrenching, really emotional drama. This whole character progression between the two of them as they slowly realize that they love each other. Obviously, this wasn't planned. It was just supposed to be some fun, but hey man, the end of the world really does crazy things to you, doesn't it? As well, we learned that Laren possibly could have been Elias's mom, Zerxus' kid, who's not actually his kid. That was something that I had thought about and almost put in a video, but they didn't really seem to go anywhere with it. But it's interesting that they kind of had the same idea too. Honestly, I like that they didn't go that route. I think it's kind of fun the way that it played out already. Also, we learned that Sam's crazy speech that he had at the end, the one that had everybody in freaking tears, was written in the span of like 5 minutes at the break. Like, man, if I already wasn't self-conscious enough about my writing, I'd say Sam did in 5 minutes what I couldn't do in a week. And the fact that he ended it all with a joke, remember the market of wonders. Well done, Sam. If we didn't think this guy was a genius already, I mean, damn. You have nothing more to prove, my guy. There's also some other fun stuff. I may have missed this during the show, but we learned that Patia likely had her memory wiped, most likely by her grandfather, hence why they never really bring up anything to do with her parents. Super sad when you think about it. Patia really is the most alone character out of everyone in EXU Calamity. The whole scene of her standing beneath her grandfather's statue and wishing her grandfather a happy replenishment really hits way harder when you realize that, you know, her memories of her parents and everyone around her was probably just taken away from her. Well, Brennan kind of ties up a lot of loose ends. A lot of people talked about how the story was on railroads. I mean, we even talked about it a bit in some of our videos, specifically the EXU Calamity scripted video. But obviously, Brennan had to do this, being it a, you know, a short condensed story that they had to get through. So Brennan had a lot of contingency plans on if, you know, they didn't pull Asmodeus through the portal, if Laren didn't blow up the tree, all of this other stuff. A lot of it, he says, he easily could have fixed just through brute force, having Vespin show up with, you know, devils and things of that nature, using Xerxes' blood, using Vespin Koras's artifacts. All of these things, basically, he could have used to eventually have the Betrayer Gods be free, because obviously we knew that they were going to be free eventually. We knew that this tree had to be destroyed, I guess, in hindsight. So it was going to get there no matter what. Obviously, though, having it play out the way it did was just way better, and this could only be done by the fact that the players were just so hard committed to their characters and their character flaws, and the fact that Brennan, as an amazing DM, can just roll with it and just play on these flaws constantly. Yeah, a lot of stuff we can learn as DMs and as players between this relationship and how to tell an awesome freaking story. A lot of the lore that was fleshed out and planned was actually done between Matt and Brennan themselves. They talked about this a little on their GM roundtable a couple weeks ago. Matt came out with the Gouger Starry Druids, the Tree of Names, all of that stuff. Apparently, he did it really fast. Go figure, Matt Mercer, world-building genius. Who would have thought? Kind of really cool. Brennan talks about how he's able to kind of take a lot of these different story beats that were already written by Matt for, you know, Critical Role lore, being the Calamity, Vespin Chloras, all of these things, the attack on Vasselheim, and he was able to kind of put it together in this way in which it didn't break the overarching story, but it really fleshed out this small little pocket. Like the fact that he gets to flesh out the story of Vespin Chloras in the whole EXU Calamity is probably one of my favorite things, because, like I said, Vespin Chloras in Critical Role lore, for the people in Exandria, he's like the worst person ever, but we get the minutia that it's actually not the case. If anything, he was a symptom of, like Brennan says, the larger problem with the age at the time. All of the wizards are culpable for what happened to Vespin Chloras, this pushing of boundaries, this, as we learned from, you know, Bria's character Laren, this ambition to a fault. I do wonder what would have happened, though, had they not stopped the release of the Primordials. I'm sure Matt could have explained it away, but the whole thing was, we didn't really hear, from my knowledge at least, anything about Primordials in the Calamity. So I was really wondering, like, if they didn't stop this, what was going to happen? Apparently, if Laren died, there was going to be some contingency rolls, probably by Sam's character, Loquacious. Very, very hard rolls to get the Astral Layrite to work. But obviously, this was an option that could have not happened. So they didn't really answer that, but they kind of did. Brennan makes a point at wanting to say that he didn't want to make some big overarching statement kind of in the story, which I think maybe some people might have taken, you know, one that, you know, all of Zerxus' compassion put, you know, without thinking is a bad thing, or possibly that science and advancement and pushing of boundaries, this ambition is a bad thing. It was just bad in these circumstances. And then later on, they show you that it can be a good thing, in that Laren uses the Astral Layrite to eventually, you know, save everyone by stopping the release of the Primordials. And it's Zerxus' compassion and redemption that saves Vespin, even if just for a minute, which ultimately saves everyone. Finally, though, they address the most important question. What happened to Bolo, the fan favorite NPC made up on the spot by Sam, putting Brennan under the cooker? Yeah, basically, we don't know. Brennan makes a few funny explanations. It's most likely this character's just a throwaway NPC, but Brennan says possibly she was an Aeorian spy sent there to gather secrets of Avalier. Possibly she's even a dragon, polymorphed in disguise, who just wanted to live a mortal life for a while. We just don't really know, though, but knowing Matt Mercer, I would not be surprised in the slightest if this is not the last time we hear Bolo's name uttered in anything Critical Role lore related. And yeah, that was it for the EXU Calamity wrap-up. I love EXU Calamity, if you couldn't tell, or if you didn't know from watching my review of EXU Calamity or any of the other content that we did over this D&D campaign. The story was amazing, the character and cast were amazing, and the DM was amazing. What more could you ask for? As always, if you enjoyed the video or learned something new, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. I really hope we do get more Calamity content in the future, and I really hope they bring Brennan back in some kind of capacity, whether it's as a player or as a DM again, because the guy's just amazing. He has a whole cool, awesome style, and I love his dynamic with Matt. And yeah, Brennan's amazing. Brennan's a gem. Everyone in this cast was a gem. Bring them all back. Do it again. As always, guys, I hope to see you in the next one. Stay safe out there. Peace, love. Adieu.